Hold it now.
You are about to hear the most interesting, informative, thought-provoking, and funny show in America. On air and on the World Wide Web. This is the Rob Carson Show.
Well, hello, people of Earth. My name's Ken Matthews. Very happy to be sitting in for Mr. Carson today. The number's 800-922-6680. A lot to talk about. It's just been a crazy week. One of the things that jumped out at me, and we're gonna talk a little bit more about this coming up in the hour, but 94%. This is the recent tally. This is from MRC TV. They do a great job of keeping track of who's doing what and when and why to whom in the media. And 94% negative news coverage of President Donald Trump in his first 100 days. And that's even more than his very first term in 2016. And as many of you know, he was elected 3 times. Are we allowed to say? I don't know if we can say that in certain states. I mean, but you guys don't know where I am. I'm in a bunker. So it may take a while for the speech police to spring into action and say, don't talk about that anymore. 89% in the first administration, and then 94% negative news. Now, again, this is not a situation where people say, and you know, conservatives, Jay, just get so much heat in the news because there's so many liberals and soy boys in media. You can't even, most conservatives, believe it or not, are very commonsensical. I know I am one, and chances are you are one. And it's not a matter of we want Donald Trump or we want our person's administration or we want you to worship our guy. It's just a matter of 94%. Come on. That's almost perfect alignment to the 92.5% of Democrats that are in media. So there's certainly a pattern there. But first 100 days, pretty exciting stuff. I think mostly good, but there's some things that we're a bit concerned about. Among them, China. We have a China expert coming in a little bit later on the show. We have another great report from the Daily, I think it's the Daily Caller, right? Yeah, the Daily Caller, that's coming up. Anyway, the number's 800-922-6680. Let's get right into it. One of the dumbest things that Gavin Newsom ever did, and that's hard to really put on a list, but in California, Governor Gavin Newsom signed a law allowing aliens to become police officers in 2022. Do you guys remember that? Yeah. Do you remember the Brazilian national with a criminal history of domestic abuse? He beat his wife's face in. And then 2 law enforcement agencies said, hey, I don't know if we want to hire him. But for some reason, Felipe Gomez, a Brazilian citizen with a history of domestic violence, was hired. And again, 2 California law enforcement agencies said when the San Mateo's Belmont police reached out to them, what's going on with Felipe Gomez? Is he slapping his wife around? First of all, my first question is, why is Felipe in America? And why is an American law enforcement agency hiring Felipe? And that's where the Communist People's Republic of California comes in.
Last week, Redwood City Police arrested Gomes at the Belmont Police Headquarters on Penal Code 261A1, rape of someone who was incapable of giving legal consent due to a mental disorder. Before he hired Gomes, the I-team has learned that Chief Stenquist received phone calls from the San Mateo County Sheriff's Office and East Palo Alto Police warning him that both agencies had rejected Gomes because of his domestic violence arrest in 2017.
When a department head calls you and says something's wrong, take a closer look, or don't hire someone, you should take a closer look.
Court records show that Gomes and his wife were on vacation from their home in Brazil at this Ramada Inn in Kissimmee, Florida. The charging affidavit says they'd been married a year when Gomes spotted texts on his wife's cell phone from an ex-boyfriend and that he struck her repeatedly in the face and stomach. An officer wrote that he observed a large bruise that covered most of his wife's left cheek and scratches to her right cheek. The records say Gomes accused her of hitting and scratching him first, so the state attorney charged both of them with battery domestic violence before dropping the charges a month later. Belmont Chief Stenquist defended hiring Gomes, emailing me, past law enforcement contact that does not result in charges are not disqualifying in of itself under policies or applicable law.
So, again, California it's kind of ridiculous at so many different levels. And this is, they're making attempts at this around the rest of the country as well. So the question is, and I think it's a good one, and this is another example. First of all, the question, should foreign nationals or aliens, in this case a legal alien, but not a citizen, be allowed to be in law enforcement? And there's also that issue regarding the military as well. And I know for a fact that there have been some, throughout history, there have been some very patriotic men and women that were not citizens of our country that served in the military. So this is not so much an attack on that you can't find good people from other countries. It's an attack on why is our country and so many of our governors this stupid that you would have people not only with a criminal record or criminal complaints. I know it was dropped. I get it. But when two other law enforcement agencies say, look, I'm getting a bad read on this guy. Did somebody say, and I'm thinking it was the governor of California, I'm wondering if someone didn't say, he's the Brazilian guy and this is a new, the police chief may have said, well, this is the new policy, so we have to, we're having a tough time finding cops or finding people that want to be cops because the Democrat Party demonized cops to the point where people don't even want to be cops. Now, we have a great report coming up where enrollment in the U.S. military is going great right now, especially for the Army, breaking all kinds of records. So that's good stuff. But I'd love to get your thoughts on that. And as long as we're talking about not illegals, but aliens that are here that should be allowed in our law enforcement community, which, I don't think they should. I don't think they should. Unless they're an American citizen. So the reason I bring this up is so much of this stuff has slipped through the cracks. So we're 4 months pretty much into the Trump administration. And again, if I had to put a score up on the board, I would say that so far so good. There are things that Trump is doing that, I'm not happy with. If we have time, we'll squeeze those in. And there's things that I'm really pleased with. And I would say overwhelmingly, if you look at the polls, what Trump is doing with Doge and we're going to talk about the budget coming up because I have a problem with that too. We're going to talk about Doge, but what he's doing with illegal foreign nationals and immigration, it's wonderful. It's wonderful. And arresting that judge, it's wonderful. More judges should be arrested. When you go deep into the corruption into this country, deep into the crime and waste, corruption, criminality, you'll find judges there almost every time. So start putting judges in jail. I love the fact that the news media is rallying around that judge. Speaking of which, another judge just shut down the deportation of some gang members. I mean, these are the things that are slipping through the cracks, and this is where you really understand what a vast swamp President Trump has waded into with his team, that there's so much of this that still continues, this foolishness. Now, I don't know if you just saw the Trump executive order, which requires Spanish-speaking truckers to learn basic English, and they're upset about it. That's another good executive order. I think people are surprised that so many people that don't know the language are driving 30 and 40 tons around at high rates of speed. I think you'd be shocked to find out how many people cannot speak English. So we've got the police being hired in California from Brazil after they beat up their wife, and we have people knowing Inglés. I mean, well, they know the universal sign, like if you were to flip them off, but that's not very nice.
Russell Rocha has been a truck driver for 17 years.
We need to open the door to opportunity for everybody.
While he says there is a need for drivers, Rocha sees the logic behind the executive order signed by President Donald Trump on Monday.
If you can't read or understand a certain sign that's a little dangerous, it could affect all of us.
The new order requires truckers to demonstrate proficiency using the English language before getting behind the wheel. According to the executive order, proficiency means drivers can read and understand traffic signs and communicate with traffic safety, border patrol, and agricultural checkpoints, as well as others.
Es una ley inefasta.
It's an awful law, Yoman Rivera told me.
En mis 15 años como camionero.
In my 15 years as truck driver, I never had an issue with English. Rivera claims he recognized the signs and communicated with officers with his limited English.
Don't you love the fact that he's talking in Espanol? He's on CBS Miami. This is muy mas. This is no bueno. No. He's not going to cave in. I think English should be our national language. If you want to participate in things that impact the rest of the planet or the rest of our country. For example, there's that ridiculousness that's going around with the FAA that, well, why do we have to speak English in a plane? Well, I think we know why. The same reason you need to speak English if you're driving a truck. And quite frankly, I think you should speak English if you want to participate in commerce or anything government related. I don't think it's the responsibility of 350 million people to learn your language.
First off, but according to Transportation Secretary Sean Duffy, there are documented cases where drivers' inability to read signs and speak the language may have contributed to a series of fatal accidents.
We have to watch out for lives. I mean, that's most important, right? It depends on how many people are affected and how many people decide to exit the industry because of this.
Rivera says he's already seen many truck drivers putting their trucks on sale.
Well, put your truck on sale or take an English class. This should have never gotten as far as it has. This is the Rob Carson Show. My name's Ken Matthews, and we'll be right back.
The Rob Carson Show podcast is everywhere. Go to Newsmax.com/listen for details.
The number is 800-922-6680. My name is Ken Matthews. From an undisclosed location somewhere in a bunker in Pennsylvania. It's not as fancy as Mark Zuckerberg's bunker. By the way, did you see Mark Zuckerberg? He was on Theo Vaughn's podcast, and it was fascinating. All the stuff that many of us knew and believed, like wealthy people having underground bunkers and planning for the future of a reconfigured digital world, etc., okay? Which, you know, my cousin would say that makes me a conspiracy theorist. And then I should have pulled the soundbite, but I didn't know what the copyright laws were. And I thought, you know, if I get into a legal battle with Mark Zuckerberg, well, it wouldn't be good, would it? Anyway, what he said was he has a 4,500 square foot underground bunker in, wait for it, Hawaii. Yes. So he admitted it. Now, I don't know if he meant to, but he has an underground bunker. And it was in the same interview, Mark Zuckerberg of Facebook and other, what is it called now? I always forget what all these, they keep changing the names. Every time they don't test well in a focus group, they just change the name. Anyway, he said that soon we're going to be leaving all phones behind, and everything eventually will be under the skin. And then if you want to look even more stupid, you get those glasses that have all the information in them. You know the techie glasses? They advertise them. I think Ray-Ban partnered with somebody during the Super Bowl, and they had those techie glasses. So now the guy that looks stupid already, walking around with his head down, talking on his phone, or out with his wife or family talking on his phone, he looks like a butthead. Now he can look even more stupid. Now he can go around and look like he has no clue where he's going or what's happening, because all that data will be right in his eyeballs. So at least when you have the phone in your hand, you have some peripheral vision. But imagine the control that Mark Zuckerberg and his friend Elon Musk and all the people that hated Donald Trump that are now guests at the White House and throwing money at MAGA, the control they're going to have. Anyway, I was just thinking about that. What were we talking about? We were talking about underground bunkers, or who knows. 800-922-6680. One more quickie on the truck thing. This really has me bothered. I don't know if you're familiar with this case. This is the truck driver in the fatal crash. I believe it was in Texas. And his bond has been reduced. Listen to how much his bond has been reduced. 5 people dead in the fatal crash.
New tonight, online court records show the truck driver arrested after last month's deadly I-35 pileup in North Austin has his bond reduced to $1,000 per charge. The crash left 5 people dead and left nearly a dozen injured. 37-year-old Solomon Wellikil Araya faces 5 counts of intoxication manslaughter and 2 counts of intoxication assault. However, recent toxicology reports have challenged those charges. Wellikil Araya's bond conditions include GPS monitoring with no curfew and exclusion zones, use of an ignition interlock device, pretrial supervision, and no operation of a commercial motor vehicle. Online court records show a bond hearing originally set for tomorrow has been pushed back to June.
Well, so that's how much they care about those victims. Think about it. That's how much they care about the victims. The bond hearing has been pushed back to June, and the bond has been reduced from $1.2 million to $7,000. So again, there are some things getting through the cracks. In case you're wondering, things are going great. They're going in a good direction under the current administration. In fact, here's an example of that, especially for you young people. I thought this was a great message.
First, if you're here today and think that you're too young to do something great, let me tell you that you are wrong. You're not too young. You can have great success at a very young age. You're all very young. In America, with drive and ambition, young people can do anything. I was 28 when I took my first big gamble to develop a hotel in Midtown Manhattan, the Grand Hyatt, and it worked out incredibly well. But I was very young at the time. I was like a very young person in sort of an old person business. Steve Jobs was 21 when he founded Apple. Walt Disney was 21 when he founded Disney. James Madison, James Monroe, Alexander Hamilton, Thomas Jefferson. They were no older than 25 when they began the journeys that etched their names into the history books for all time. So to everyone here today, don't waste your youth. Go out and fight right from the beginning, from the day you leave this incredible university. Go out and fight tough, fight fair. But go out and fight. You're going to be very successful, because now is the time to work harder than you have ever worked before. Push yourself further than you have ever pushed yourself before. Find your limits and then smash through everything. Go.
Nice message. And if I can just add to that, as someone who's over 60 years old, so my young days are behind me. But I will say this. If you are a young person, learn how to dress. We don't want to see your butt crack. We don't want to see you in pajamas and slippers in public. And women, if you don't want someone looking at your boobs, cover up your boobs. I mean, we're just saying, young people. We love you, though. You're the future. We'll be right back. Hold on, I'm picturing the Dallas Cowboys cheerleaders. Hold on a second. Thunder. Okay. Oh, yes. By the way, that was a great documentary on Netflix. I think it was on Netflix. I was actually talking to my parents. I was down in Florida, and I was speaking to my parents about that documentary, and it was very impressive. It was very impressive. You know, because cheerleaders get a certain quote-unquote reputation, right? And so many of these professional cheerleaders, they have a lot going on. I mean, they're very not just physically fit and attractive. They're educated. They're wives. They're moms. They're working people. There's doctors doing it and dentists. Yeah, I couldn't believe it. It was pretty neat, actually. See, that's the power of music right there. It just, sorry, I got sidetracked. Happy Friday to you. It's 800-922-6680, The Rob Carson Show on Newsmax Radio. My name is Ken Matthews. It's a pleasure to be here. Stephen Miller is certainly one of the main pit bulls defending Trump's agenda and MAGA and this country. And here's a great example. I love the way that Stephen Miller slaps around, figuratively speaking. I don't want anybody thinking we're talking about violence. We're not talking about violence. He slaps the media around like a bunch of rag dolls.
It is a sad reflection on the state of our media and many of the outlets represented in this room that you obsessively try to shill for this MS-13 terrorist. Well, no coverage occurred in your papers about any of the Americans that were raped and tortured and murdered by the illegals that Biden was importing into our country. You know, you talk about due process. The Biden administration made the decision to give extensive due process to 2 trained Nicaragua terrorists that were apprehended at the border just a couple years ago. They were 2 gentlemen. They were from Venezuela. They were members of trained Nicaragua. The Biden administration Border Patrol apprehended them and made the decision to provide them with extensive due process, put them onto a program known as supervised release, and put them on ankle monitors so that they could go through a lengthy legal judicial determination as to whether these legal aliens who had just set foot on U.S. soil might want to live in the United States for the rest of their lives. What was the result of that decision? What was the result of that choice that was made? Those 2 men kidnapped a young girl named Jocelyn Ungary from her family. They beat her, they sexually assaulted her, they tortured her, they stripped her, they murdered her, and they dumped her body. That is what the Biden administration's policy was. Most of your papers never covered her story when it happened. To the extent that you covered it at all, it was because President Trump forced you to cover it by highlighting it repeatedly over and over again. He had to shame you into covering it.
That is so well put. The mainstream media often, well, most of them have no shame, but sometimes they have to be shamed into covering something that is not part of the narrative. That's why I love Stephen Miller, because he doesn't care. He does not care about a politically correct narrative. And the fact that, again, just so far on the show today, I would imagine some people are new to the fact that there are thousands of truck drivers all over America that cannot speak English well enough to have a conversation or read all the signage. And that's a fact. And then we go to the law enforcement issue, and we go to what Stephen Miller was just discussing. So if you're going to have a White House Deputy Chief of Staff for Policy and Homeland Security, it's Stephen Miller's a good pick, because he calls out the media. Somebody has to call out the media because the media is afraid to call out the media. And the government's afraid to call out the media, too, in most cases, because they think if we call out the media, we won't get favorable media. But what we learned from the Trump dynamic is Trump spent his political career, which is now, what is he, 8, 9, right? He's in his I guess he's in his 9th or 10th year of his so-called political career. I mean, that's a pretty good start. You say, you know, I might get into politics. Maybe I'll be leader of the free world and I'll beat the smartest woman while I'm at it. Yeah, let's do that in 2016. But basically, he's exposed the media since he got into it. That's one of the things people like about Trump. Love him or hate him, he exposes the media. And he also is doing a better job on the border control and crime that results from it than most people. Now, do you remember the big dust-up over Signal and Mike Waltz, the former national security advisor? He was the national security advisor earlier this week. And then that Signal thing, that people went on Signal chat, Pete Hegseth and several other people, and apparently there was a reporter that was dialed in, and there was some, we find out that there was some things that should not have been on Signal. Now, I knew Signal was a problem back when I got on Signal, when I got on it at the very beginning. Remember all you MAGA folks and conservatives that were swearing by Signal? I was one of those people. Oh man, I'm on Signal, man. Yeah, this is all scrambled and decoded and all that other terminology they use. No one's going to follow. No one's going to catch me on Signal. No one's going to hack Signal. Everybody's on Signal. I would imagine China's on Signal right now, signaling how much fun they're having with this latest scandal. Anyway, so Mike Waltz, I'm sure he'll stay off of Signal now, along with other people. If you're in the government, why are you on any type of communication device that I'm on? My gosh, I'm podcasting and I'm on a radio show right now. Why are you on the same? I shouldn't be able to. You should be able to communicate so tight. And the fact that you're communicating, what is wrong with you? What's going to be next? Check out my Insta for the bombing coordinates. Selfie with a missile. Stop it. Get your act together. You're making the people that are really doing a good job look sloppy. And there's some really tight people in this administration. And we appreciate that. Anyway, I don't want you to worry about Mike Waltz, the former security advisor. He has he's gotten an internal promotion. He'll be the UN ambassador now. See, that's the beauty of government, whether it's the Democrats or the Republicans. You can totally drop the ball, totally screw up, totally embarrass your boss. But if he likes you, you're in. So Mike Waltz is now going to be UN ambassador, and I hope I never see him on Signal again, because there's a lot of top secret stuff involving the UN. And there were some other people that lost their job, too. A few weeks ago, Laura Loomer gave a dossier to President Trump. And I don't know if you were aware of that, but she was calling out some people in the National Security Office. And let me just say this. I do not think Mike Waltz was doing that for a nefarious reason. I just think that these people, I don't know if they're just online too much or whatever, but if an American citizen can get on a platform and communicate securely, then the government cannot be secure on it. You can't have it both ways. You can't have it both ways. It's like people that try to message behind the scenes on Telegram. Do you know Telegram is one of the major platforms for child trafficking? People use Telegram. Yeah, I know. And so there's all these conservatives out there and MAGA people that think, well, I'm secure, I'm on Telegram, I'm secure on Signal. I'm on Signal. You want to be secure, you go to a bench in a park and with no electronics on you and no one in line of sight, and you whisper. Or you put something on a bird and you have the bird fly to your neighbor's house, like a pigeon or something. That's how you're secure. We are no longer secure. There are no secure communications. And if the government has something that's top secret, if I know about it, it's not top secret. If I'm talking about it with my neighbor over a beer, it's not top secret. Hey, let's get on that Signal thing. That's pretty good. Yeah, I know the CIA's on it. We can see what they're saying. I hope not. More good news from the Trump administration. He fired climate researchers working on the 2028 report. Now, the climate crisis, just the name, is a brilliant, brilliant move of propaganda. There is no climate crisis. But The person on PBS said there. Well, that's another thing. We're stopping the PBS funding. Hoorah! I'm glad we are. We should. I don't want to pay for propaganda. Do not cancel PBS. Do not cancel NPR. In fact, don't cancel anything. If you support free speech, don't cancel it. Just don't support it. But keep in mind, hundreds of scientists and experts for decades have been working this grift of climate crisis. And that here's what we need to do. Here's what you, Mr. American citizen, from Houston to San Diego to Baltimore, here's what you need to buy to save the planet. Because it's a crisis. Now, here I just thought it was weather. That's what I thought when I was growing up. I just thought it was weather. I just thought a bad storm was a bad storm. I didn't know that my neighbor, because he has a sweet brand new Blazer, he's causing the climate crisis because it's a big, giant sport ute. Remember that propaganda? Researchers were working on the 6th National Climate Assessment. It was set for an early 2028 release. So just to put it in perspective, most climate alarmists have been lying to you and me about the severity of carbon and greenhouse gases and all the other blah that we are fed as children and in college. And, of course, there's children still in college and adults. There is no climate crisis. It shouldn't even be in the top 20 issues facing this country. But it is, and that's the brilliance of having experts lie either knowingly or just because they want to stay on the grift at the college and get their grants. They were going to let this assessment from the National Climate, this team that does all this work and research that you and I pay for, they've been doing it since 2000. It was going to come out in 2028. Yes. So the same group of people that cannot tell you in Biloxi, Mississippi, if it's going to rain this coming Wednesday, they're going to have an assessment for you in 2028. And it's going to tell you you need to eat bugs, you can eat beans, but only if you can harness the fuel. Don't eat beef, don't use gas, and you're going to have to lower your carbon footprint. It's ridiculous. So Trump fired all of them. I love it. Everybody's melting down over it. How can Trump fire all those people? What are we going to do if it rains Tuesday? This is the Rob Carson Show. I'm Ken Matthews. We'll be back with your calls coming up. Hope you're having a good Friday afternoon. My name is Ken Matthews. Glad to be sitting in again for Mr. Rob Carson on the Rob Carson Show, 800-922-6680. So we wrap up the first hour. Again, 800-922-922-6680. Let's go to the phones. This is Gary in Kingsville. Gary, welcome to the Rob Carson Show.
Hey, good afternoon, Ken. I haven't talked to you since back when Rush was still alive.
Oh, wow. Well, welcome.
Yeah, good to hear you again. Anyway,
thank you.
Help me to resolve something that I just cannot understand.
Okay.
Some weeks ago, when this whole signal thing first flared up, Greg Kelly on Newsmax did a segment on his show. Now I know he perhaps has his biases, and I get that. But he showed documents showing how the intelligence community, back in December of 2024, as Biden was going out the door, was telling everyone who was communicating and was concerned about threat actors like China intercepting their communications should use Signal, among other things. But it mentioned the name Signal. And it said that everybody should be using it. So now I'm trying to figure out, because I've heard very few other journalists or commentators or anybody else speak on this issue since that time. So I'm wondering, did he make it up? Is he not a viable source of information?
Oh, no.
Everybody else ignoring it.
I certainly wouldn't say that at all. What I would say is common sense says, and I would start with common sense. That's my first approach to an issue, common sense. If I have access to it and I'm just a civilian, non-military civilian, if I have access to something that you have access to, then the whole world does. Okay. So that's the first thing. Now, I'm just wondering, because Signal is an encrypted platform. It's just like sometimes people use. I don't know if you use Proton Mail. I do. I'm technologically illiterate. Oh, okay. Well, Proton is like another. Proton is something that I use just with business stuff, and I know that. Look, and the iPhone manufacturers or your digital company can follow you anywhere they want. They can listen to anything they want. So what I was shocked at, and I can't address this Greg Kelly thing because I don't know what information he had, but I just think that I totally agree, and that you should not be using something that is this accessible to the public for something that hot of an issue or a mission. And I've heard mixed stories about how that got into the pipeline, and that's why I said I don't think Waltz. I don't think he had a nefarious thing, or I don't think it was a matter of him being lazy. I'm sure there was some leftover protocol in that department from wherever it came from, and these people thought, just go on Signal. We'll talk about it on Signal.
Well, and this is why he was suspicious about it, because he likewise went on Signal, and he said one of the things I noticed was, I believe I've got this right. Correct me if I'm wrong. Mm-hmm. But when he put messages on there, they deleted themselves after a period of time automatically. Are you familiar with that?
Yes. Yeah, and that is something you can do, but you don't have to do. So that's a feature that you can use. Again, I'm not an expert on it either, but I just know it's kind of like people always talk about, why is President Trump on Truth Social, which is totally different than Signal because it's not a message app, but why is he on Truth Social? Well, I think anybody who's on any type of message app or digital platform wants you to see what's going on. And if you don't want me to see what's happening as an American citizen or as an enemy, which I'm not, but if you don't want your enemies to see, then people shouldn't even know where you are. Does that make sense? I mean, I know there's more secure apps because I know people in government.
Everything that you just said makes perfect sense to me. But I'm not a part of government, I'm not a part of intelligence, and I'm not a social media kind of individual or a tech individual. But he's showing these documents. He showed them on air.
Yeah.
What these people were saying, when they did it, and it could well be that they were just so arrogant, they put it out there thinking somebody will these Trump people will read it, just like Comey thought he could just waltz into the White House and start questioning people. Back in the early days, they may well have thought we could do this again. And
Gary, I appreciate the call. It's a great point. I have a hard break, but thank you again. You brought up some great points on that Signal issue. We'll be right back on the Rob Carson Show. Coming up in the second hour of the Rob Carson Show, how many criminal referral requests have been filed against Tony Fauci? Mr., you can wear a mask, you don't wear a mask. You stand 6 feet away, you don't stand 6 feet away. It's all theater. It's all theater. I'm a billionaire now because of pharmaceuticals. Also, California is about to decriminalize some more crime. And your calls all coming up on the Rob Carson Show. I'm Ken Matthews. The number's 800-922-6680. My name's Ken Matthews, and I want to mention this very quickly because I always forget to do it, and they always tell me here that I can't. So you can find me all over social media at Ken Matthews. That's Matthews with 2 T's. My website is kenmatthewsmedia.com. I do a daily podcast Monday through Saturday, which is a subscription podcast because it's completely censorship-free, commercial-free, narrative-free, and music-free. I'm proud to say it's less music, more talk, because I don't pay the rights on the copyright music. So Just giving you a little insight on the podcast. My neighbor's like, why do you say less music, more talk on your podcast? Because I can't play some of the music without getting sued. That's why. I'm just being honest with people. But anyway, it's great to be here filling in again for Rob Carson. The number is 800-922-6680. And something that I believe, and perhaps you are you share in these beliefs, okay? I don't think there is a law that has been created in the United States that has been designed for anything but to further limit our freedom. I think laws are designed to control people, and not even bad people. And that's what really bothers me about so many laws and regulations and fines. And here's an example. I don't know if you know, but Real ID starts next week. So let's do a little update on Real ID. But that's just another example of something we don't need. The people of America did not want, and I'll explain why they didn't want it, and how harmful it will end up being, much like some of AI. So let's just go with Real ID in case you're not clear on what it is or you forgot about it.
Just 6 days, all American adults will need a Real ID or passport to fly domestically. For most of you, that'll look like a star in the top right of your state ID, but some states have different icons. Now the TSA is preparing for major disruptions at airport checkpoints come that deadline, May 7th. Senior official performing the duties of Deputy Administrator Adam Stahl is here for more on that. Adam, I know it's a busy time, so we appreciate you coming on. Walk me through this. Why is TSA requiring that Real ID, these requirements are implemented now?
Yeah, so first off, thanks so much for having me. So this was a law passed 20 years ago.
Okay, that should tell you everything. This was a law passed 20 years ago, and they couldn't get enough people on board with it to even implement it, and this is right after 9/11, or a few years after. They couldn't even get people on board with it 5 years after, 10 years after, in the middle of the GWAT, the global war on terror. Well, we have to have a Real ID now to travel, domestically. The Real ID is designed to track American citizens. It's not designed to weed out terrorists. I know what the narrative is. I don't care about narratives. That's one of the reasons I do a podcast. I don't care about what the government press release says or what they send to the Good Morning America team to blather out. The only reason they want some of this stuff is to keep track of you and me. If they wanted to keep track of bad people coming into America, they would have sewn up the border 25 years ago. And if they wanted to eliminate horrible things like 9/11, there would have been more people on duty on that day and less screw-ups that we learned about later. I know, it's heartbreaking, but so this is a Band-Aid, and it's another way to make a bunch of people money, a bunch of security consultants, and so you can't use your Utah driver's license anymore. It has to be a Utah Real ID driver's license, or you can't get on a domestic flight. Well, that starts next week, so don't be all frustrated because we let this happen. We let it happen. And Republicans and Democrats were pushing for this and pushing for this, but the fact that it was 20 years ago and it was initiated by a illegitimate, unconstitutional department known as the Department of Homeland Security. Where does it say there should be a Department of Homeland Security in the Constitution of the United States? It doesn't. They just made it up. Oh, this will be cool. We'll have this badge that trumps all the other badges. It'll be above the FBI. It'll be above your local police department. And it'll allow us to walk all over the Constitution anytime we want. We can just walk into people's homes. Well, what are you doing here? Terrorism. But I'm not terrorism. But why do I have to give you my fingerprint to go on the plate? Terrorism. I know you understand it. Real ID to travel in my own country. Are you kidding me? I'm a United States citizen. You don't even want to require a photo ID for people to vote. The Republicans and the Democrats have both been okay with thousands, if not millions, of illegals over the years voting, working, driving, flying. And yet now you and me and the rest of our neighbors have to update our driver's licenses. Is everything the government is doing just a grift? Is it just a money-making machine 24/7?
And it was, critical vulnerability that was identified during 9/11. And so this administration, this secretary, we're really focused, and we believe that identity and document integrity is really key to ensuring the safety and the security of our skies. So
that was not a critical element identified in 9/11. It had nothing to do with the IDs. It had nothing to do with that. This is the foolishness of it. But all you have to do, here's what you do. You say 9/11, or you say any number of other horrible things in history, and no one's going to talk about it because they don't want to get in an argument or feel guilty or whatever. Well, we had to do it because of 9/11. Oh, how long have we been saying that? How long have we been saying that? Did you know during 9/11, you were not allowed to, and this actually made sense. Immediately after 9/11, you were not allowed to cover your face at an airport. And what were we doing 4 years ago? Globally, everybody needs to cover their face. Put a mask on. I'm sorry, ma'am, you cannot come in the airport unless you cover your face. Well, wait a minute. How are you going to ID me? Do you realize the foolishness? Talk about sheeple. Unbelievable. Unbelievable. It goes into effect on May 7th. Now, here's your other option. You can use a passport. But who has a passport? So again, I want you to think about all the stuff. Hold on a second. I had to sneeze. I thought I was going to sound like a sheeple for the rest of the day. I want you to think about all the things about ID and photo ID and digital ID and all this blather we've been hearing from the government for years. And look at what they are pushing and look at what they're preventing. Okay, so we have a government that will not push through a photo ID to make sure that you are an American citizen with the constitutional right to vote. That's never on the table. But what is on the table and what got pushed through just recently, after 20 years of the American people and constituents, and to their credit, some governors with brains saying, no, we have our own government. We have our own driver's licenses. And if you want to travel internationally, it's a whole different ball of wax. You have to have a passport. Like I have a passport. You may have a passport. But think about what they push and what they don't support. And that's the biggest load of... I remember my wife and I going, we went to redo our mortgage or something in 2021. Okay? The bank was closed, so we had to do... Remember when the banks were closing and you had to make an appointment? Because of COVID. I know. We got a COVID story coming up. You're not going to be happy with it, but who knows? Remember that foolishness? So it's, okay, yeah, you and your wife just come to the front door, knock on the door. Remember, don't have your face covered at all. Or no, did I have to have it covered? No, I had to have it covered. You see? Make sure that you're totally covered up. You have a complete mask. It has to be over your nose and your mouth because of COVID. And then we're going to let you into the bank. We'll walk you through the bank while your face is covered. We're not going to search you or anything. Come on in. Unbelievable. Unbelievable. And now Americans need real ID to travel. Unbelievable. And it's too late. It's here. We've been talking about this. When I say we, I'm talking about conservatives that pay attention, like in this audience. Conservatives that pay attention. There's a lot of conservatives out there that don't pay attention. There's a lot of conservatives out there that think they're awake and they're tuned in and locked in to what's happening. Well, if we were that tuned in, because we are in the majority, there would not be real ID. There probably wouldn't even be a TSA or a DHS, but too late.
been a law. It's been punted, and we're really focused on enforcing the law while also minimizing impacts to travel for the American public.
What happens after May 7th if you come to the airport and you only have your regular driver's license, let's say? Will TSA turn travelers away?
So absolutely. I don't want to speak to exact specifics. Every airport is unique, and they have different travel patterns, wait times, and travel demographics. But there is a possibility if you arrive to the airport without a sufficient or compliant real ID or an alternative like a passport, that you may be experiencing additional wait times. In extremely rare circumstances, you may be denied travel. But we're really encouraging folks, per usual, get to the airport early, 2 hours for commercial travel. So really just underscoring the fact we really want folks, to comply. If you haven't gotten your real ID, please engage and visit and enroll through your local DMV, or please bring an alternative like a passport or a military ID card.
There it is. There it is. Through your local DMV, which is the dumping ground for every single grift. Well, we can register you to vote when you, we can do that. And, of course, if Jorge is here from Guatemala, he seems nice enough. Jorge, would you like a license? Would you like to register to vote in San Francisco? Because you're allowed to. That's right, senor. Come on. Like I said, maybe it's just the way I grew up. I'm just not a big fan of the government. The government is not here to help. They're not. They're not. And you know they're not because it's none of their money. So anytime someone says to you, I'm going to hook you up, and they're from the government, they're using your own money or your neighbor's money to hook you up. And I'm just wondering how many more millions of people it's going to take till they figure that out. Well, I can tell you this. Over the next couple of months, it'll be interesting to see how the media covers this real ID, which in my opinion, again, it's just another real scam that we were pushed into because of fear-mongering and lack of common sense. Ken Matthews in for the Rob Carson Show. I'm going to put my mask back on because I don't want to get any of this common sense on anybody. Okay, we'll be right back. We're coming right back. Yes. Oh, yes. This is a delicious Friday song right here. 800-922-6680. My name is Ken Matthews in for Rob Carson today on the Rob Carson Show, heard nationally. If you'd like to weigh in. Earlier in the show, I was talking about one of the things I'm thrilled about that President Trump has done. Now, if you listen to my podcast, you know there are some things I'm not thrilled about, and there is a mix. But I have to say, pound for pound, if you look at the 100-day scorecard, I think Trump is hitting it out of the park. When you consider all the moving parts, when you consider there's people in his administration that don't even know what a secure line is, or, sorry, I can't make the signal thing go away. It's just too funny. I just wish that, all organizations were such that when you make a mistake like that, you just get a promotion or a raise, or they just move you to another department. But that's not just this administration. That's every administration at some level. But something that Trump did earlier this week, I was thrilled about. He got rid of that climate change assessment team that every few years, I think every 3 years or 4, it's every 3, because I know sometimes it overlaps on different administrations. So it was every 3, starting in 2000, a group of these experts. That's all you need. All you have to put on your LinkedIn page is, I'm an expert. In what? Does it matter? I'm an expert. That's all that matters. I'm an expert in taking a bad rainstorm and saying it's a superstorm caused by too many people grilling and cows pooping. And if that wasn't happening, we wouldn't have these superstorms. Just like people in weather centers and meteorologists are great at saying, well, these strong winds are causing a lot of fires, Dave. No. Oxygen doesn't cause fire. Winds don't cause fires. They spread them, but they don't start them. And we recently have had, what do we have? We just had the fires in New Jersey. We had the brush fires in New Jersey. We were talking about those recently. Very bad brush fires. And it turns out that was arson. And I don't know if you've been paying attention, but over in Israel, massive, massive wildfires in Israel. Yes. Check that out. some of them along the coast. So, again, I don't know enough about that particular situation, but I'm sure by the Sunday morning news shows it will be linked back to climate crisis, climate change, one of the great grifts that they've been teaching our children, that we have to change our lifestyle because you and I are changing the weather by our behavior. Talk about an arrogant theory that you and I, if we have too big of a carbon footprint, we can destroy the earth. Talk about ridiculousness. Let's go to Sean in Live Oak, California. Sean, welcome to the Rob Carson Show. Thanks for calling.
Oh, greetings from West Libtardia.
Well, greetings.
Yes, and getting back to the climate propaganda that's being put out, it reminds me of something I saw. It's called the Battle of the Graphs, and it was showing the actual climate that occurred for 1,500 years as opposed to Michael Mann's scientific fraud.
Oh,
hockey stick graph.
Yeah, the hockey stick scam, yes.
And the thing is the hockey stick did not show two major climatic events. One was the medieval warming period.
Mm-hmm.
That was the time that the cathedrals were built because that was a time of human prosperity. And the other thing it didn't show was
Little Ice Age.
Yeah, the mini Ice Age.
Mm-hmm. And it also showed such a small snapshot. And that's the other thing. And I'm glad you brought up the graphs because experts always like to use graphs.
Yeah.
And they always like to say in every other newscast, check it out when you're listening tonight. And thank you, by the way, for calling, Sean. I appreciate it. Check it out wherever you are in whatever state you guys are in. Listen tonight to your forecast. And if there's a major storm or flooding, just wait for it and you will hear, we've never seen a storm like this before. It's just unbelievable. This is one of the, this is just another example, Dave, of, or Dale, or Becky, or Shaniqua, who's ever at the news desk that day. Another example, Shaniqua, of this global climate change and this uncertainty. That's why it's so important that we buy electric cars and we stop eating meat and we just get rid of these houses and things that are, we just need to get rid of everything. If we can just get rid of everything and wear those funky Mark Zuckerberg glasses and eat roots and herbs and grain and maybe an occasional bug, then we can treat Mother Earth the way she should be treated. I disagree completely. I'm going to have to agree 1,000% with Rob Carson. God created the earth to provide for man and all the resources that come with it. That's why fossil fuel is so awesome. And that's why eventually alternative energy sources may gain traction and be economical, transportable, storable. But at the moment, oil is just, well, it's just wonderful. I would say delicious, but I know there's probably a liberal out there that would try to sip it. And I don't want you doing that. I don't want anybody getting hurt. We'll be right back with our guest from the Daily Signal. Thanks so much for tuning in today. It's the Rob Carson Show. My name is Ken Matthews. Thanks for your nice comments as well. 800-922-6680. But let's go to the Newsmax hotline because Tony Kinnett is with us. Tony is an investigative columnist from the Daily Signal with a smoking podcast, and he's back on the show. Hi, Tony. It's first time meeting you. Welcome.
Ken, it's good to see you. I've admired your work from afar.
Well, thank you. So how are you on this Friday, and what's making your head explode?
Dude, I'll tell you what. You ever attend press conferences? Have you ever been unfortunate enough to stand in the sun while people bloviate?
Yes, they are so, oh my God, I can't stand them. I hate them.
Right, so I had an exciting day planned on the 100th Trump administration day. I was set to go over to this special new media press conference with my friend Chrissy Clark, who also does a lot of Newsmax stuff. I was excited for it and found out our White House press correspondent, she couldn't make a USDA presser, and so I was going to have to go to that instead. Well, I bet you can guess how excited I was to go to an agriculture presser instead of the really cool Levitt one. And so I get there, and it's Brooke Rollins and it's Kristi Noem, and it changed my entire perspective on the Trump administration.
Wow. Now, was Kristi, let me ask you this, was Kristi Noem dressed up in tactical gear? Because that's been her latest fashion statement.
I mean, look, as a pundit, I was ready with those jokes. Seriously, I came prepared to, say like, nobody's dog was harmed throughout the press conference.
I hear you.
Yeah, sure. But no, she was dressed in a normal suit. So was Brooke Rollins.
Okay.
And they gave, along with a senator from the Dakotas, excuse me, I don't remember which one, but then Representative Johnson, the current governor now of South Dakota, it was the best press conference ever. It was all about how the Trump administration has immediately halted and dropped all federal charges against this small, like less than 100 head of cattle ranching family in South Dakota that Biden was trying to throw both parents on separate charges in 10 years of prison for letting their cattle graze on like one small 1 acre long strip of federal land.
This is
insane.
This is serendipity, Tony, because I actually know that story. I've had people on from South Dakota about that very story, along with some of the carbon issues that are taking place, how they're trying to destroy the land. So carry on. This is a great story. People need to hear what the Bidens were doing to farmers and landowners.
So you got to understand, I come from Indiana. I'm in eastern central Indiana. And I grew up on my family's farm, and there are a lot of small farms. Now, over time, as I grew up, I saw a lot of farms get incorporated into larger operations. There are a lot of wonderful large operation farms, but small family farms know that if the EPA wants to do you in for using the wrong pesticide or for, something happens that doesn't quite fit their regulations, the federal government can swoop in and take everything that's been in your family for hundreds of years, like this South Dakota family, for over 100 years. Fifth-generation family, they can swoop in and take it all away, and no one will care. I didn't hear about the Mod family when Biden was going after them because of literally a land dispute, like where the borderline was. I mean, that's like Judge Judy civil lawsuit stuff. That's not throw both parents in prison and leave their kids essentially orphans. I mean, my God. And so to see Trump step in with his administration and Kristi Noem get up there and say what we've all suspected for a long time, which is that Biden's administration, people would write into agencies that you're paying for, and they'd ask questions, and they would get the middle finger. They'd get no response at all. I thought that ire was just reserved for conservative journalists like myself. No, it was everybody.
No, the Bidens are very diverse in who they dump on. They dump on minorities, majorities, left, right. They'll dump on anybody.
And that's why I think that incidents like this are the hallmark of the greatest achievement in the Trump's first 100 days of this second administration. I mean that. Toppling this bureaucratic lordship. And by the way, Kristi Noem actually made a point to decry this type of fourth administrative state fiat rule over basically serfs and peasants in her speech. And it's that kind of action. It's that kind of attitude that the Trump administration is bringing. We haven't seen a rollback of the bureaucracy in over 100 years. No one's talking about it. It's bewildering to me.
And the other part of it is, and you bring up so many great points, Tony, is the fact that there are so many layers. Depending on what your perspective is, you may think the bureaucracy is the educational industrial complex or the pharmaceutical or the medical or the military. But as you pointed out, it's the agricultural industrial complex. There is a complex and a bureaucracy. And like you said, that kind of kings and serfs relationship at every level in some county in every state across America. And if you don't have the money or the wherewithal or the connections, it'll eat you alive.
And even non-American landowners understand that if the IRS wants to lock you up, all they got to do is come up with the crime. Because, again, you don't have to pay a bill. You have to guess at how much you owe the federal government. You have to guess as to whether or not you're on a watch list for some thing that you said on social media. And, again, Secretary of State Marco Rubio has talked time and time again about these dossiers that were created about just average, regular Americans, parents going to school board meetings, Catholics, just in general, Catholics. I mean, it is insane that the prosecution of Americans, it was so commonplace. And now, for the first time, I don't care about anything else. Of course, I love a lot of things that are done. But I will never give credence to the crying and the whimpering over MS-13 gang members when I saw Americans locked up, stripped of their families, of their property, of their entire life's work, because some nameless, unelected bureaucrat in some gross office or their own living room working remotely making $300,000 a year decided they didn't like that person.
Well, you know, I think farmers and truckers get such a bad rap from globalists, because globalists want to eliminate everyone. And I'm using globalist because, like you said, so much of this is not a Democrat or Republican thing. It's a I'm in power and you're not thing. And that's what I think. That's where Trump's power, which he's amassed plenty, that now I'm excited about. I love hearing stories like this because, you know, Trump did the same thing in the first administration. Do you remember, I'm sure you do, when he was first learning about what was going on in the prisons? And he was in the Oval Office, and I know for a fact because Van Jones was there, and it was like that's one time where Van Jones couldn't say enough nice things about Donald Trump. And he said he picks up the phone and he starts calling these prison wardens, and people start getting released like that week. And that's what we love about Trump.
I think so. And this is one of the things that I also admire about J.D. Vance, and not only because we both look very much alike. I think that
I noticed that.
Vance, just a little. You know, Vance comes from, again, raised by his grandmother from Kentucky into Middletown, Ohio. I was raised by my grandmother mostly into Middletown, Indiana. And there's this Midwestern origin of a lot of really great men and women that I've admired growing up who were able to have tough conversations and were not going to do this obfuscation, this, you know, glossing over issues. Oh, I'll get to it. Your check's in the mail. Let's do lunch. That kind of Hollywood push it off speak. Mm-hmm. And I think that's one of the reasons that you're right, that Trump is so successful, but also that Vance is so successful in the eyes of the American across party lines, is that they are willing to have the tough conversations, and they're also, when they're talking to you, they're actually talking to you. They're not just saying thank you and nodding with their mind somewhere else. What you say to these individuals will actually change their entire perspective on the American people. It's like they're representing us or something. It's wild.
That was very well put about J.D., and I've been a fan of his ever since I read his book. And I remember, and then the movie came out, and then I saw, you know, he got into politics, and I said, is that the same guy? And then even when Trump picked him as the running mate, I said, is that the same guy? Because here's a former Marine, a guy who really had to scrape and scratch to survive, and so different than Mike Pence. You know, I look at Mike Pence, in my opinion, stabbing Trump in the back, and then I look at J.D. Vance, and he is so pro-military and pro-farmer and pro-America.
I think of the way the guys on the Ruthless podcast described it so expertly. He's just a regular guy. And, again, we used to try bending over backwards to describe politicians that way. Mm-hmm. Oh, it's someone I could really, you know, share a beer with. And it really was a coping mechanism to say that there was a little more human element to this wax figure than to the other wax figure. But Vance, I mean, they've tried so hard to make this guy look not normal. And that can't land. Usually you have to try to make a politician look human. With the media, they have the reverse problem.
Yes. Oh, yeah. And he is, because he is, and I don't even want to say raw, because Vance is extremely articulate, and he's extremely courteous and polite. And I think this really throws everybody for a loop, because they describe this guy like in an Esquire magazine article. He's a barbarian. He can't be, you know, all these things. And then you meet the guy or you see him and you're like, they're not talking about the same guy.
And that's the secret. This is the entire secret of why the left has completely lost all touch with the middle of the country, because Vance is not an anomaly. Vance is the standard of the Midwest, of the South, a group of courteous individuals who are articulate, who do have real trials and things they've gone through. They have expertise in areas that people on the coasts have not had to in their coddled environments. And that when Vance comes forward and articulates himself well, the amount of shock, oh, how could someone from Ohio be so distinguished and articulate and, oh, such a professional, such a barbarian. The reality is that the Midwest has become the anchor point for the culture of the United States. And I'm cackling over watching all of the coastal elites at the Atlantic, aptly named, completely melting down over having lost what they used to control. And so fill up your glass with liberal tears. They've earned it.
Very good. Tony, if people want to follow you or listen to your podcast, where do they need to go?
You can find me, Google me, Tony Kinnett, Kinnett. That'll bring me up. Otherwise, dailysignal.com. I'll see you there.
Awesome. Thank you, Tony. You made my day. What a great report. This is the Rob Carson Show. I'm Ken Matthews. We'll be right back. I wish this was me playing the guitar. How cool would that would have been cool. Yeah, but it's not. 800-922-6680. My name is Ken Matthews. You can find me at kenmatthewsmedia.com. I do a daily podcast as well. I'm all over social media. I'm on Truth Social. That's where I follow the president, President Donald Trump. And where else? YouTube, Odyssey, Rumble, Bumble, Mumbles, Flumble, everything you can be on where I can try to get you to tune into something that I'm doing. 800-922-6680. Filling in for Rob Carson today. By the way, Gordon Chang. We're going to be talking about China. China expert. I know you guys are familiar with Gordon from being on Rob's show before. There's more shifting in the China landscape. But I did mention, and I want to bring this up because I'm very excited about it, and that is the criminal referral request filed against Anthony Fauci, Tony Fauci, one of the great leaders of the COVID scamdemic. 7 different states, top officials, COVID officials, are being referred to for criminal request, and in some cases, indictments are being drawn up. Now, this is great news. The question is, will both Republicans and Democrats see eye to eye on this? And the problem with so much follow-up prosecution, we have this all the time, and, our guest, Tony, just mentioned this, that, it's not, we were talking about, are people going to follow up? Are people going to break through the bureaucracy? And it's going to take both Republicans and Democrats to do it. Every time we have an opportunity to expose some of the Jan 6 liars in the media or expose something about COVID that wasn't on the up and up, there's always a group, maybe a small group, but there's always a group of Republicans and Democrats that push back on it. And you have to wonder, that really makes me wonder if Republicans and Democrats can agree on covering for someone like Anthony Fauci. It's almost like they're the same party some days, isn't it? How can you agree on that? How can you agree that the way the government treated the January 6th protesters was constitutional? So there's a group called the Vyers Law Group and the former Feds group Freedom Foundation. They've submitted criminal referral requests to state prosecutors urging investigations into Dr. Anthony Fauci and other officials for alleged crimes during the COVID-19 pandemic. Now, they join Florida, Louisiana, Texas, Missouri, and Oklahoma in a broad accountability effort. This is exciting. So here's some of the people they're targeting. The referrals are based on testimonies from over 80 victims and families. Now, think about this. 80 victims and families have testified. What have you heard about this in the local media? 80 victims and families have accused officials of enforcing harmful policies, lethal hospital protocols, denial of treatments, and medical coercion, resulting in injuries and multiple deaths. I mean in the thousands. This investigation also targets Dr. Fauci, Dr. Francis Collins, also of the NIH, Deborah Birx. Remember Deborah? Remember Dr. Rochelle Walensky of the CDC? Remember Dr. Peter Daszak, the Eco Health Alliance? And others, along with healthcare administrators in Arizona and, yes, my state, Pennsylvania, because we are one of the most corrupt states on earth. I don't want to hog it, Maryland. I don't want to hog it, Texas. But Pennsylvania, we're one of the worst, especially when it came to COVID. We'll talk more about this in a minute on The Rob Carson Show. I'm Ken Matthews. We'll be right back. This is The Rob Carson Show. My name is Ken Matthews, sitting in for Rob today. Thanks for tuning in. On Newsmax Radio, 800-922-6680. And a moment ago, we were talking about the referrals, criminal referrals, based on testimonies from actually hundreds, but in this particular case, there are 80 in this particular group of criminal referrals, 80 victims and families accusing officials of horrific policies during the COVID, what I call scamdemic, because every week we find out more lies that we were told during COVID. I just talked to someone yesterday, a person that I work with occasionally during the week, and she said one of the biggest regrets she ever had was taking the COVID shots and even the boosters. And I said, why did you do it? And she said, my family pressured me into it, and work kept saying, well, we're not sure. I mean, you can keep working here, but we're not sure if they're going to make it. And I'm thinking, holy moly, this was one of the greatest scams of all time. And again, this is where we need to call on Republicans and Democrats to bring these people to justice. Now, similar legal actions have been taken in 5 other states. 2 county-level investigations are already underway. So this is growing scrutiny of pandemic-era decisions fueled by whistleblowers, which were prior to Trump coming back. The whistleblowers were targeted. Many people, many I had on my prior radio shows, I had on my podcast, they were banned. I had been censored. I had been deplatformed. I was banned from Facebook for 4 years. Yes. Yeah. Little old me. I sound like Opie. I was banned from Facebook because of what I said about COVID. Right. Yeah. And yet you could go on YouTube and order really nasty stuff. That's okay. Yeah. A lot more coming up in hour 3 of The Rob Carson Show, including another exciting guest and your calls. Thank you for listening.
Carson Show.
Welcome, welcome, welcome. Hour 3 of The Rob Carson Show. Again, thanks to the team today, Brian and the rest of the team, Ken, and, of course, Rob and the Newsmax team for having me in. We're in hour 3. The number's 800-922-6680. If you'd like to weigh in. So many things are going on. I'm really looking forward to Gordon Chang, our guest, coming on, because there's a lot going on with China. So I'm biting my tongue until Gordon comes on and he can shed some light on it, because he worked over there for close to 20 years. I've never even been to China. I think about all the people that get their impression of certain things or places from a TV screen or the radio. And there's nothing wrong with that, because if the people are honest and upfront and truthful, you're getting accurate information. But think about all the people who have never been to the Middle East, and somehow they're experts on the Middle East, or they've never taught school and they're experts on teaching school, or they've never, you know what I'm saying. So it'll be good to talk to someone that can actually say, well, you know, if you turn there in Beijing, you're going to end up in a dead-end street. Because I want to find out what's going on there. And I also want to get his take on how long are these tariffs going to go on. Because I think tariffs are a great tool, but if they're overused, it's just like any other tool. The tool can break, and it could break on the wrong thing you're trying to fix, right? Do you remember the guy that cries all the time, and he cries and lies, actually? Adam Kinzinger. Remember? Former Republican congressman who trapped within young Adam was a leftist idiot. Remember him? Well, now he's a Democrat, and he's on CNN, and he's a talking head. He's like a dream come true. Every major platform, especially the ones that hate Trump, which is all of them, almost all of them, they love recruiting people like Liz Cheney, who's also someone else who should be in jail and indicted, or Adam Kinzinger. And if I'm not mistaken, they were both on the Jan 6 committee, right? Yeah. It helps to be able to lie and cry to be on the Jan 6 committee. Anyway, he was on, what was he on, the CBS Evening News or something recently? And I want you to listen to this blather. But this is proof that the quality of representatives, in the case of Adam, as they get older, they just get worse. And the fact that he has gotten away with what he's gotten away with, and I'm not even going to bring up the sleeping with the spy, even though we just talked about China. I'm not going to bring that up because it's all alleged, right? But I want you to listen to this. It's this constant backing up people that hurt America. I don't understand it. But listen to this foolishness.
Each step in and of itself is not enough to be outraged to the point of take to the streets and general strike, right? But in accumulation, they are. And when you say to somebody that, oh, we're gonna not do due process for this bad person, well, next thing it's, okay, we're not going to do due process, because we already did it for the bad guys, for the people that are here illegally. And then, well, there are enemies of the state, and I get it, they're American citizens, but, you know, they were Palestinian rallies or whatever. And then next it's Adam Kinzinger, he's a rhino, and he went against the president. And then next thing it's you. That's how these little steps, each of which is not enough to spark massive outrage, but in accumulation is. As they said, you know, and again, I don't want to make comparisons to Nazi Germany, but...
How many people start off saying that? People that probably haven't read enough about Nazi Germany to have an intelligent debate on Nazi Germany are always the ones that bring up Nazi Germany. And here's how they bring it up. I don't want to make a comparison to Nazis, but Trump, Nazi, Trump, Nazi. Conservatives, you're Nazis. You're like a Nazi. It's almost become, why don't you just say Yahtzee? That's a game we play. Why don't you just do that? You've taken every single word, especially you folks on the left, but the rhinos have done it too. You've taken the entire language and watered it down so nothing means anything. Truth doesn't mean anything. The word vaccination has become a joke. The word pandemic has become a joke. Hero, you've turned the word hero into a joke. Everybody's a hero now. Everybody in school. You're such a hero, Timmy. I mean, you could have turned in that assignment, late, but you turned it in, only 20 minutes late. Timmy's a real hero. Can we get Timmy something? Can we get Timmy a hat that says hero? And I'm tired of hearing politicians say, I've served the American people. No, you haven't. You haven't served me. I pay you to work for me. Does every single person that you've ever paid come back to you and say, I served you loyally while I was fixing your car? I served you. No, you're getting paid. You're getting paid to be a congressman or a representative or a senator. And you're not a hero just because you cry and you know when and where to lie. It's unbelievable. And they all start it the same way. I don't want to compare what's happening now to Nazi Germany, but
In this case, it's a good example, which is if in 1935 they'd have opened concentration camps, the German public would have rebelled. But if you just boil the frog to the point where you open it in and of itself, you get yourself to a point where it's not outrageous.
Oh, my God. It's ridiculous. And the thing that's so ridiculous about it, if you look at the real big problems that we've been facing, if you look at things that are unresolved, unsettled, and still being covered up by most of the media and all of government, for example, a stolen election, a fake scamdemic, a climate crisis that isn't really a crisis, it just goes on and on. And you could keep going. You could go to the Governor Whitmer in Michigan, Governor Whitmer kidnapping plot, that turned out to be fake. Yeah, one of the biggest news stories of that 5 or 10 year period, it turned out to be fake. It's just fakery on fakery. Then somebody comes in and they say, look, what we're going to start doing is arresting people here illegally. And people go, yeah, we should do that. And then they start doing it, and people are upset. If you're here and you were an MS-13 and you're here illegally, you shouldn't get due process. The whole due process thing, I don't know where this mythology stems from. If you're an American citizen, you are covered by the United States Constitution. If you break into our country illegally and you're not an American citizen, well, then the rights are a little different. Things are a little different then. Do you realize the chaos that has been ensuing since people in our government have not had the courage to say, hold on a second, that person isn't even an American, and they're driving around drunk, killing people or raping people? How does that happen? I'm trying to figure out how a member of your family or my family, and then their coverage from the Constitution, they're covered by the Constitution, right? They have those rights and the amendments and all the different things that go with it. How is that equal to someone that should not be here? And that's when everybody says, well, you know, it's more about the world. We're a global village. No, we're not. We're not a global village. We're not. We're a sovereign nation with culture, borders, a constitution, a military, ethics. Well, we used to have ethics. There was a time. Denver businesses have been fined over $8 million total for knowingly, hiring unauthorized workers. This is the latest press release from ICE. 150 unauthorized workers have been accounted for among 3 different businesses during workplace audits, resulting in more than $8 million in fines. This is good. Look, I hate to see businesses get fined, but if you're breaking the law, what do you expect to happen? There's an entire generation that believes, and you see it every day. You see it, whether it's on TikTok or YouTube or in a classroom, that they don't have to follow the rules. And they either say it because they believe there's something special, which is the wrong message to send, or because someone that they trusted to follow the rules doesn't follow the rules. So this is the big issue I have with Hunter Biden. This is the big issue I have with anybody who gets away with doing what they did, Republican or Democrat, or a professional ball player. We live in a world where right and wrong changes from day to day. So I'm thrilled that under President Donald Trump's administration, he said, we're going to start finding these businesses, and if we catch you with an illegal, unauthorized worker, you're going to be fined. Good. Go after the businesses that are making it worse for the people that follow the rules. That's the biggest problem I have with all these different laws and regulations and how you're crippling the small business person. Meanwhile, in California, again, not to pick on California, but you deserve it. In 2014, you may remember that California voters voted in favor of a law reducing criminal penalties for theft. Remember the grand larceny laws? They were shifted up to, I think, $1,000. So if it's under $1,000, it's not a felony. It's in some cases it's a misdemeanor. Do you remember that? 10 years later, last year, do you remember? They were forced to reverse it and implement new laws seeking to crack down on the rise in theft. What do people in California, and I don't just want to, I'm all kidding aside, there's several states that do this. I mean, Minnesota's not that bright either when it comes to people that are in charge of the government. What do you think happens when you tell people, don't worry about it? It's going to be okay. Just keep breaking the law, and we're going to make it easier for you. So a California state senator, Lola Smallwood, has introduced a bill that would eliminate, listen to this. Now listen to this. Think about the budget. Think about what we've been through economically. Think about where we are. Think about what your taxes were a couple weeks ago. That'll get my blood pressure up. So she's introduced a bill, anyone convicted of welfare fraud, as long as you've stolen less than $25,000, if it's under $25,000 in taxpayer-funded benefit fraud, there will be no criminal penalties. You see what I'm talking about? $25,000 now. So they just said to everyone, including all the illegals, don't worry about it. Just make sure you stay under $25,000 because it's not a criminal offense. What does that mean? Well, that means you can work for the government. Maybe California will hire you as a law enforcement officer. You know? Think about that. This is a California state senator just proposed this. Well, what happens if they only swindle $24,000 of American taxpayer money? Shouldn't they get a break? Well, apparently so. 800-922-6680. My name's Ken Matthews, and this is The Rob Carson Show. The number's 800-922-6680. My name is Ken Matthews, and this is The Rob Carson Show. Filling in for Rob, wrapping up the third hour on a very exciting Friday, the first full weekend of May. It's exciting. It is. I hope you have a good weekend planned. I hope you had a good week. Pretty good week for President Trump. Got the budget proposal out there. I'm not thrilled with how much is going to defense, the Defense Department. I think there's a lot of unaccounted for money there. I have a problem with it. But there are cuts where I need them to be, where I'm hoping they'll be if they get that far down, you know, as far as the cuts are, the different proposals. I'll just read you a couple that are proposed and that are in the upcoming budget. You may have seen some of these already, like getting rid of the U.S. aid and reallocating that money. There's a $350 million grant program for preschool development that the administration contends pushes DEI initiatives. A lot of stuff like that I think is good. Now, we hear the term preschool. We hear the term not school lunch. I don't have a problem with the school lunch program. I used to, but I don't now. I'm just saying that the kids have to have some opportunity there, and there should be some food provided if you're going to have someone for 8 hours at a time, okay? That's my justification of it. I don't want to go and slash everything. I don't want to slash all funding to schools. I want to cut the bureaucracy. But when it comes to some of these preschool programs, and I mentioned a couple weeks ago on my podcast, by the way, you can find me on subscribestar.com. You can find me on Twitter and Rumble and Facebook. I'm all over social media. Ken Matthews with 2 T's. Just type in Ken Matthews Radio in the search bar and you'll find it. And we were talking about the fact that so much of the money spent on schools is bureaucracy. And just like the recent case at the Supreme Court, the schools were pushing transgender ideology and sexual content way too biased and way too adult for these younger kids. And that was, you didn't find that in the news coverage, but I watched the entire case. I listened to the entire argument. I read the entire argument. And it turned out that this particular school, and I believe it was in Maryland, I forget the city, I forget the school district, but they were actually pushing this. So we have to stop that funding. People don't realize how much propaganda and manipulation of ideologies and belief systems take place, especially in elementary school. This is by design. This didn't start 2 years ago with the Democrats or 8 years ago with the Republicans. This started 100 years ago with people that knew to control a country and to control a population and to control the markets the way you want. you're going to have to educate people to think and do what you need them to do. And that's why schools are set up to get people to go along, to get along. That's why there's political correctness. That's why there's DEI. That's why there's words you cannot say. And that's why free speech is now being kept off a lot of colleges. Because if people start getting a little too rowdy and start thinking for themselves, it's going to be a lot harder for the government to control us. That's just historic fact. So I want to cut every single program that even had a whiff of political correctness to it. And that's going to thin things down. Like, here's something. $77 million grant funding for teacher preparation and professional DEI and critical race theory initiatives. That's ridiculous. How about this? Teach my kids how to read and write legibly so they're not a junior in high school and you can't even read a note they write to their teacher. How about that? Okay. Also, I wouldn't have a problem if you were to teach kids to pull their pants up, not show their butt, tie their shoes, use the belt. Go ahead and connect the belt, wear the belt. And who came up with this? And I don't know if there's funding for this or not, but someone had the idea. If you have a 32-inch waist, you purchase a pair of pants that's 52 inches, and you wear it right around your thigh. And then you wear $70 boxer shorts. And that's how you go to school. Okay? So until you can fix that, I don't want a penny going to critical race theory or what to call Timmy if he thinks he's a tree. So I don't have a problem with that. So hopefully we're going to continue that. Coming up, where would the Democrats be, especially the Democrats, without the late night, can I say prostitutes? I'm going to say prostitutes. Yeah, late night media prostitutes and puppets. Where would they be if they didn't have a late night show to go on and pimp their wares? All that's coming up on The Rob Carson Show. I'm Ken Matthews. This is The Rob Carson Show. My name is Ken Matthews, guest hosting for Mr. Carson today. Wrapping up Hour 3. The number is 800-922-6680. On the Newsmax hotline, Gordon Chang, author of The Coming Collapse of China and Plan Red. Also, I noticed that Mr. Chang was born in New Jersey and worked in mainland China and Hong Kong for almost 2 decades. I was born in New Jersey, and I escaped to Florida and hid there for almost 2 decades. Mr. Chang, welcome to the show.
Well, thank you so much, Ken. And I still live in New Jersey, so I have not made it out.
Oh, well, let me know how I can help. There's an underground railroad.
I will think about it. But, I'm just New Jersey all the way through, so I probably will stay. But thank you anyway. May need it, given the government in Trenton. But
yes.
Thank you.
Yes, but it's great to have you on, and I've admired your work, and I've been wanting to ask you some questions, and one of them is, and then please expound, is it possible to uncouple the influence of communist China on colleges and universities at this point in the game, in 2025? I mean, if you look at the influence they've had on the news media, on agriculture, on our own government, are we too far down the road to start unraveling this?
No, we're not. And remember, we didn't have Chinese influence in our society, but we let it in. It was a very permissive approach, very generous approach. China did not move in the direction that everybody wanted, so we can undo this. Now, this will be painful. I mean, the Chinese are going to struggle all the way. But remember, it's the Chinese that are also decoupling from the United States. So it's not only a push out, it's also the Chinese are pulling out. That's an important story for us.
What is motivating communist China to decouple? If you believe that's what's happening, what is driving that? Do they think there's a better opportunity elsewhere?
No, it's just that periodically throughout China's history, Chinese regimes have shut the outside world out. And they've done that when they felt the pressures are too great to withstand. And we're seeing Xi Jinping do this, something which his hero Mao Zedong did in the 1950s. And by removing foreign businesses and foreign influences from China, he is effectively cutting these links and the influence that the Chinese have in our country. So he is removing the incentives that people have to, for instance, be very friendly to the Communist Party.
Do you think people in our government, and I won't name names, but feel free to name some if you'd like, do you think people in our government understand the threat of Communist China and what they've managed to accomplish over the years and the damage they could do if they ever really wanted to play even dirtier than they play? Do you think our government gets it, or are there just too many people in our government that make money from Chinese deals?
Well, some people get it. I think President Trump gets it, but there are others who don't. And it's not just Democrats. It's also conservative Republicans, because conservative Republicans feel that, geopolitics should not play into economic decisions like tariffs. And so you see Rand Paul, for instance, trying to undercut President Trump's move on tariffs. Now, Rand Paul's not a communist sympathizer, but he's doing the Communist Party's work nonetheless. And he's not the only conservative Republican doing this. So we've got a problem throughout our political system in that people don't understand the fundamental challenge that the Communist Party poses to the United States.
And
this is a problem across our political system.
So is Rand Paul doing this because he's a free market purist, or he just thinks that there is value in letting things go as they are going with China? I mean, why would he? I totally agree. I doubt Rand Paul is a communist sympathizer at all. But is he just a purist, and is that why he's pushing back on the tariffs?
Well, he's a purist. He believes that the president has overstepped his constitutional authority, and people make that argument. But the president has more authority in wartime. And we're no longer in a peaceful situation where we have wars on 3 continents right now, fueled all of them by China. China's threatening to start other wars in East Asia. And, of course, China is assaulting the United States, killing Americans. 70,000 Americans a year die from fentanyl, which is a Communist Party project to kill Americans. And in this situation, I think we need to have a very different mentality. We're no longer in peacetime, and we need resilience. We don't need efficiency as much as we did before when times were peaceful. We need resilience. We need to make sure that Americans make the things that Americans need, and people like Rand Paul completely do not understand that. So as I said, he's not a communist sympathizer, but he is doing the work for Beijing in undermining our ability to defend ourselves. Shame on him.
I think the media overlooks China's influence on countries like Mexico, providing the fentanyl cooks and providing weapons to the Middle East as well. I don't think people realize that communist China has enormous reach. And sometimes I think we just think, well, if we just close this border crossing, it's all good. I think China's exploited our weaknesses, both politically, on both sides of the aisle for many years, starting with Nixon. What say you?
Yeah, we talked about fentanyl. We closed the border with Mexico. We still have a fentanyl problem because fentanyl comes in from Canada. Mm-hmm. The world's largest fentanyl lab was not in Mexico, was not in China, but it was in Vancouver until last November when authorities shut it down. The Chinese have taken over Vancouver, in effect. And we have a real problem because the Trudeau government, and I'm sure the Carney government is going to continue this, have allowed Canadian soil to be used by those assaulting the United States. So we've got a problem on our northern border as well as our southern one. And this is going to be a matter of some contention that the Trump administration is going to have to deal with because we now got the government in Ottawa, which is, again, friendly to Beijing.
Now, as someone who spent almost 20 years in that part of the world, tell me some of the good things that they are doing. Are there any good things they are doing that we could benefit from or partner with?
You mean the communist regime?
Not the regime. I'm talking about China. I mean, are there aspects of China that it would benefit us to continue to trade with, academic exchange, things of that sort?
We could have good relations with China, as we've had in previous times, but the Communist Party believes that the United States is its enemy, and it's formally declared it to be such when People's Daily in May 2019 carried a landmark editorial that declared a quote-unquote people's war on us. In Communist Party thought, people's war is total war, and although we're Americans and think that we have the right, to God-given right for that matter, to ignore what our enemies say about us, China is using this propaganda to create a justification to strike America. So this propaganda has great importance to us, and we need to pay attention to it. And when we do that, then I think that people like Rand Paul will have a different attitudes towards things. But until then, we have allowed China to have its way in our country, on our college campuses, which you were talking about, as well as through our media outlets, through Hollywood, through our government, through all phases of American life. And that's why it's important now to reverse that process, as we're starting to see in many areas.
Now, as far as if you were to rank countries that were the biggest geopolitical threat or military threat, obviously you would put Communist China at the top. What would you put in second place?
Well, the countries that I would put in second, third, and fourth places, we're talking about Russia, of course, Iran, North Korea. They are all fueled by China and would not pose much of a threat or as much of a threat if it weren't for the support that Beijing gives them. So, for instance, Russia would not be in the war in Ukraine today were it not for Beijing. And you can say the same thing about Iran's assault on Israel, the attack on October 7th, and its maintenance of the war, the Houthi attacks on the United States. We're seeing, for instance, a Chinese company, Changguang's satellite technology, provide targeting data to the Houthis who are using it to attack U.S. Navy warships. So this is something where we've got to understand that we've got an enemy. They're trying to kill Americans, and we are not responding with the determination and the vigor and the vision that is necessary.
Do you think this is because of the trade that continues to remain at places in like the large box stores and what have you? And that's the argument that I have often with fellow conservatives and people that are part of the MAGA movement. And I am and have been a Trump supporter for quite some time. That, how do we sift through this? Because they are so powerful and they are a threat. And we've, as you said, since Nixon, we've been inviting them in. Probably before that. How do we go into the schools and start and say, okay, this is enough with the communism. We need to start backing this off. How do we do that without causing all kinds of problems?
Well, there will be problems because China's hooks into the United States are deep, but it's something we obviously have to do. You can see, for instance, the Trump administration going after Ivy League schools for their promotion of Hamas, the anti-Semitism. Well, we need to do the same thing with regard to China. We need to have a government that is forthright about China, willing to speak in clear tones. And, for instance, we have not had that in our country yet. President Trump's doing some very important things, but one of the most important things is he needs to do what Reagan did with regard to the Soviet Union. Only when Reagan started to speak out about it did he crystallize American opinion. And we obviously need to do that with regard to China, just as we did with the Soviet Union. Because if we don't do it with China, we will not defend ourselves as we need to.
So do politicians, do they need to back off and kind of get in line with Trump's policy? Because I think the problem I have as a citizen on the outside, not privy to what's happening, I see one group of politicians saying China is this incredible threat, and the other group of politicians saying, this new factory can make the iPhone for only this much, so let's cut a deal with them. So obviously that's a conflict. How do we fix that?
Well, that particular problem you mentioned, the iPhone, is being fixed because Tim Cook has said that most of the Apple production destined for the U.S. market is not going to come from China anymore. You're going to see both products made from India and Vietnam by Apple coming into the United States. Now, Apple, of all the companies in the world, has the most difficult supply chain to move. And if Tim Cook can do it, then others can do it as well. So that's what's going to basically happen when companies realize that the friction between Washington and Beijing is now baked in, and it's not just a question of Trump's tariff war, as people call it, but is going to continue for quite some time because the Chinese regime is not going to let us alone, and we are going to have to defend ourselves. And hopefully, we do this before it's too late. We will change our views. But
you do believe it's doable.
Do it in time.
You believe it's doable, and you think Trump is the guy.
Trump is the guy.
Excellent.
Because if nobody else, if Trump were to not do this, I can't see any other American politician who has the same courage and the same willingness to take on elites. I'd like to see him do more. I'd like to see him speak out like Reagan, but Trump is the guy.
Excellent. Gordon Chang, thank you for being on the show. It was a pleasure meeting you for the first time. And where can people get your information, your books, or find you?
Yeah, I tweet most of this stuff at GORDONGCHANG, and I archive all my articles for free on my website, www.GORDONCHANG.com.
Excellent. Have a wonderful New Jersey weekend, sir, and I look forward to talking with you again.
Thank you so much, Ken.
Take care. This is The Rob Carson Show. We'll be right back. The number's 800-922-6680. This is The Rob Carson Show. My name is Ken Matthews. Thank you so much for tuning in today. A few minutes left in hour 3, and we lost a great truth teller this week. David Horowitz died at 86 earlier this week. I had the pleasure of meeting Mr. Horowitz and having him on my show. Author, journalist, a person who kind of went through a transformation as he learned and saw more of the world. And as he wrote and commented on it, he saw and shared even more truth. And he'll be missed. He'll be missed. Hopefully there's a new crop of people coming up. And I think there are. I think there's a new crop, a new generation. I'm seeing a lot of people in their 30s and 40s that are engaged in history. My concern is all this digital stuff that's happening that's pulling us away from history. I'm not a fan of AI. I'm not a fan of all the digital stuff. I'm not a fan of Real ID. I'm not a fan of digital this. I'm not a fan of a global central digital currency. Just full disclosure, I'm not a fan of any of it. So it's not necessary. And it's designed, I think, just for control, like we were talking about Real ID. And here's another example of that. Wonderful story here, and I find out that it's going on in several states, not just Virginia, but it doesn't surprise me that it's going on in Virginia. If you are a reckless driver, you now have to do this thing where you get, and here's what it's called. Let me find it again. It's ISA, Intelligent Speed Assistance. So this is like, the breathalyzers thing. If someone's caught drunk driving, they put the breathalyzer in your car and you can't start it up without doing the breathalyzer. Well, this is a speed thing now. This is a new law, which will not be effective until next summer. Heads up on that. And it requires a court to order enrollment in what is known as the Intelligent Speed Assistance Program for any person convicted of reckless driving and who is found to have been driving in excess of 100 miles an hour. You will now have regulated speed on your car. So again, this to me is foolishness, but it is another way to make money, as most driving laws are. Most traffic laws and driving laws are designed to make money off people that don't really violate the law. Now, I'm not saying if you're going 100 miles an hour, you're not speeding and you're not violating the law. But to me, this is a signal. It basically says, okay, we caught you going over 100, so now we're only going to let you go 70. That's basically what this is. This is another excuse to get a digital device in your car and my car, like they already do for insurance purposes and other reasons, to keep track of where we're going, what we're doing, how fast we're going, where we're parking. I wish people would catch on to this quicker than they are, but I don't know if we're going to be able to outpace the digital control that we're trapped in. We're trapped in a digital net. This is the Rob Carson Show. I'm Ken Matthews. We'll be right back after this. Oh, yeah. The Rob Carson Show. My name's Ken Matthews. Thanks again for being so nice as I guest hosted for Rob today. You remember Down with OPP? Well, most senators and congressmen do. 800-922-6680. This is that clip I was telling you about before. Every time a Democrat needs to be promoted or their policy needs to be propagandized, the entire late-night lineup, for the most part, with the exception of, I forget his name, the one on Fox. Who's the one that beats everybody on Fox? Anyway, Gutfeld. Thank you, Brian. I was drawing a blank. Gutfeld. With the exception of Gutfeld, most of the late-night shows just kiss political butt. Here's an example.
Speech. I know that this is not an announcement that you would make now, but can I ask you this? Is, like 3 years and 8 months too far in advance to even be thinking about something like that?
Listen, I'm governor of the great state of Illinois, the land of Lincoln, I might add. He would be a Democrat if he were alive today, I might add.
Yes. They like claiming him.
Oh, my gosh, it's so embarrassing. Kimmel should just start hugging people and kissing them openly. Have a great weekend. I'm Ken Matthews. I'll see you next time on The Rob Carson Show.
The way you see the world depends on how you look at it. Where some search for ways to achieve their goals, others see windows of opportunity or entire worlds of opportunity as far as the eye can see. So while some see barriers, we see breakthroughs. And Unisys Cloud, AI, logistics, and digital workplace solutions help you realize one breakthrough after another. Unisys. Keep breaking through.
Information. Truth. Is freedom. Is Newsmax. It's real news for real people.